Hi, everyone. Name's Craig, and I'm going to talk about our decision to bomb Japan at the end of World War II and why it may have been just. So, first off, it could be argued that Japan started World War II in China. Normally, we always credit the Germans or their attack or the Japanese attack at Pearl Harbor, but the Mukden incident occurred in 1931, and that was where Japan blew up its own railway as an excuse to invade China. So they invaded Manchuria, China later in 1931 and created the puppet state of Manchukuo. And that's really the beginning of the fighting in the Asian Pacific theater, and really the first fighting of the war. Japan was a tripartite backed country, so that means that they were allied with Germany and Italy. They had a big Pan Asian ideology, which kind of means that it could be argued that it was a race war. There was a mistreatment of and Pan Asian ideology. They didn't really discriminate on anyone, but what they did was they just believed that Japan and Asians were above everyone else. Uh, Japan had many war crimes against it. There was a mistreatment of pre-OWs. They had done the rape of Nanking, which was where hundreds of civilians and soldiers and women in China were raped and brutally murdered. Japan had captured women and turned them into prostitution. They called them comfort women. They had brainwashed civilians into committing suicide instead of being captured by the Allied forces. And Japan had a big Bushido mindset, and what Bushido was it was an ideology that dated back to the samurai. And what it stated was it was the highest honor to serve the emperor and country, and it was better to die in service to the emperor than to be captured or defeated. And the Bushido tactics were taking place in the form of kamikazes and bonsai charges. And it was certain death, but it was in service to the emperor. Toward the end of the battle, when Japan started losing the initiative and the US started gaining it, we can see a lot more of that Bushido mindset and Bushido tactics taking place in Okinawa and Iwo Jima. We also see some of the war crimes that took place. Those are two big battles. There was rotting bodies. There was, rotting coconuts from rats, and there was somewhat of a guerrilla warfare taking place. Japan would hide their weapons, and when the U.S. soldiers would walk through, they would just mow them down with those machine guns. Something they also did was they castrated the U.S. soldiers, and they never picked up the dead Japanese bodies. And once we gained those islands, Okinawa and Iwo Jima, it provided us a spot to bomb Japan. The Potsdam Declaration, was, ignored by Japan. And it was just obvious that they were just going to go on to the last man, to homeland China, and, civilians would be involved in the fight then. And it could be said that our decision to bomb Japan would have been a way to scare the Soviets and to scare other powers from, messing with us or messing with other countries. In the firebombing of Tokyo, almost 100,000 people died, but it just was not affected. They would not surrender. And realistically, we didn't have a full grasp on the long-term damage, like the radiation. We had seen radiation at the Trinity test in New Mexico, and we saw other damage, in other tests. But we didn't know the long-term damage it would cause to people. The U.S., it was probably just to drop the bomb. Japan was a brutal enemy that needed to be stopped. It helped us show our power to prevent, Soviets or Germany from doing something that they would have regretted. And Japan was on the edge of defeat, but they just would not stop. So President Truman viewed it as a way to bring our troops home and as a final punch. And I agree. It may have been a final punch.